Okay, to start, we need to prepare and chop up our herbs and spices. First is the thyme. We take out the thyme, a sprig of thyme, and we're going to finally chop it up. This is going to be used for seasoning your chicken breast. Prior to doing this, you should at least preheat your oven to 425. This gives us enough time during the prep work for the oven to be ready. So we insert the chicken for baking. So everything's ready. So everything goes seamlessly together. We chop it up. The next one is rosemary. With the rosemary, taking out a sprig of rosemary, we will then we're going to peel off the leaves and then finally chop them up. We don't need much of the seasoning for it, just enough. So we peel it off. These great little packets I found in my local supermarket, Winn-Dixie, they sold for $1 each. It really is quite affordable there, and you don't use a lot of herbs and spices, a lot of herbs there with it, and this is great. It only costs like $1 at Winn-Dixie. You have to check it out at your local supermarket, but they were a great little package there. Here we just finally chop it up, keeping in mind safety is important, that you don't cut your finger. Okay, now we're going to bring out the chicken, and we're going to sprinkle the freshly chopped herbs onto the chicken. Do it on top, and then you can, because the chicken is moist, it will stick to it. You can always turn it over and season on both sides. Yeah. And add a little teaspoon of salt. Sprinkle the salt. And then the next one is we season it. We add some sprinkles of pepper. Sprinkle the pepper there. Okay, and that looking very good, healthy chicken. Chicken is very quick. Now we have to dredge it in flour. You just take a quarter cup of flour, put it in a bowl. Here I'm actually going to turn it over and get some seasoning on both sides of the chicken. Just rotate it in the plate there while I dredge it. Now I'm going to just dredge it. And here I'm just working the flour all over all the nooks and crannies of the chicken. Look at this quite big chicken there. Big piece of chicken. We're just dredging it there. Doing a lot of dredging, just getting it really thoroughly covered with the flour. And we put it there, and we have finished, ready for the fryer. Now I chose to use a cast iron, flat iron skillet. The reason I did this, because I want to sear the chicken, but also I can using the cast iron skillet, I can go ahead and put the skillet and the chicken right into my preheated 425 degree oven. Just remember, you're going to need to have some type of pot holders or towel to hold the handle, because that's going to be hot. when you take it off the stove and when you take it out of the oven after it has been baking for like 12 minutes there. Now we're actually going to sear it. We put it on. I put it on the top side first, thickest side first, and we're going to sear it for 2 minutes. Yeah, we're going to sear this for 2 minutes, waiting. Okay. This just basically gets a little crust on the chicken to help keep, when you bake it, to keep the chicken moist inside as well. It'll go on for the searing. Okay, first we need to understand and define a couple of terms and then explore the process of proper searing. First of all, searing is not simply for steaks. The secret to a great prime rib is to start at a high temperature to sear the surface, and lower temperatures to finish it off. Pork chops, chicken, roast, all benefit from searing, though may not work the way you think. Browning, also known as a Maillard reaction to caramelization, is caused when you heat sugars and amino acids together. This reaction occurs in meats heated to temperatures between 300 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit. This reaction is what causes that very flavorful and wonderful crusty surface in meats that give it that great grilled flavor. Without this browning, a steak just isn't right. So to a great brown piece of meat, you need to cook it at temperatures above 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Charring is when the surface of the meat breaks down completely, leaving only carbon. This typically happens on a grill where the meat meets the metal. Charring is bad, not only because it doesn't taste good, but charred meat is very bad for you. The breakdown of complex molecules in the meat creates cancer-causing substances. Charring can occur when the meat comes in contact with something more than 500 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you overcook it. Now the first side is seared. We actually turn over the chicken, and we're now going to sear the chicken for the other side for another minute. The first side we sear it for 2 minutes. The second side we're going to sear it for an additional minute. And like I said, once this minute's up, our oven has been preheated. The preheating light has gone out. And once we have finished searing the second side, we're not going to put this into another roasting pan, because we're using a cast iron pan, which is great for baking and stovetop cooking. We're going to take it right off the stove and just stick it right in the oven and bake it for at least 12 minutes. So what is searing? By definition, searing is to cook something hot and fast to brown the surface to seal in the juices. Yet many leading cooking experts agree that searing does not seal in juices. Okay, now you see the chicken is properly seared on the second side. We just took a cloth with a handle and we just stuck the whole pan and the chicken in the oven and set the timer for 12 minutes. Now we're going to work on making the sauce. Starting with our stainless steel saucepan, we need to first brown some green onions or shallots, whichever you prefer. I chose green onions because they're easy to come by. Here we put a little bit of cooking spray. We spray, I use some buttery cooking spray in the pan. And I'm going to chop up the green onions right into the pan. Since it's just one person I'm doing this for, I don't need any more than just one stick of green onion. Here I'm actually cutting up the green onion into small pieces, very small bite-sized pieces, and shredding it right into the pan. Be very careful with this technique because you can easily cut your thumb if you're not careful, but you want to do it light and firm and not hard. There, just cutting up the onions to shred. There, and as it goes in, it cooks there. And like I said, I only need just one stick of green onion for this. We're just going to now stir this and let this green onion get caramelized and a little brown. Let it get caramelized, and just let it do it. There. Some will say that you need something like a blast furnace to get a great sear. Makers of infrared grills are always talking about temperatures above 700 degrees to get a good sear. Of course, they also say that you can only use this kind of heat for about 60 seconds before the surface of the meat begins to burn and char. What we want is a juicy piece of meat, so that the first rule has to be not to overcook it. Since there is no magical sear that will hold the juices, especially on a steak grill, too well, you need to get the steak off the grill at the magic moment and not a second later. Another thing to know is that any grill that is working correctly can sear meat. You just have to do it right. So how do you get the right sear? The first rule of searing is not to be timid. Just because the pork chop has started to brown doesn't mean it's time to flip. Look at a dark brown color before you flip, and not just a nice golden color. Dark brown, but not black either, this is browning, is what's going to give that steak the flavor and texture you want. If you sear for the flavor and not the juices and don't overcook it, you get a great piece of meat every time. Now we are adding 2 cups of our Pinot Noir wine. Just bought it there. And we are going to set this to boil, let it boil, and let it boil down into a single cup of wine. The process of a good sear needs to start before you light the fire. You must have a good clean cooking surface. This will allow for even contact between the meat and the metal. You can oil the cooking grate through with fattier meats that you won't need to. But if you do oil the grate, you need to use the right oil with a high smoke point. Safflower, canola, and sunflower oils break down at much higher temperatures than oils like olive and lard. Once the oil breaks down, it produces smoke and a bad flavor. So if you're oiling the grate, use only those oils. For the meat, you need to make sure it is dry on the surface. Marinades are okay as long as you let the marinade drip off the meat first. Water is particularly bad because it's going to turn into steam almost instantly and will actually lift the meat from the grate until the steam can escape. This will create uneven grill marks and also cool the grate, reducing the sear. Meat that is dry on the surface is best, but of course we know the benefits of marinades when it comes to bad things that can form on the grill meats. With a dry piece of meat and a clean grill, it's time to preheat. This is very important. You want to turn on the grill's main burner to high. Let the grill heat up for at least 10 minutes until it reaches the maximum temperature. Your experience with this piece of equipment is very important, so use your common sense and knowledge of the grill to make sure it is as hot as you can get it. Now you are ready to sear. You need everything within arm's reach, and you need to move quickly. Your grill has stored up about as much heat as it can, and you want to keep it there. Lift the lid, get the meat onto the grill as quickly and safely as you can. If you know where the hot and cold spots are, aim for the hot spots. When the meat is on the grill, close the lid. This isn't as much to get the meat to cook all around as it is to keep the heat in the grill. Most experts will tell you that you're going to flip it in 1 minute. That may or may not be the case. Again, your experience should guide you. But keeping a close eye on a clock is good if for no other reason than future reference. Like I said, you want to get a good dark brown color on the meat, but you don't want to be lifting the lid and the meat repeatedly to see what you get. Once the meat is properly brown, you need to flip it to the previously unused part of your cooking grate. This part will still be hot, the place where the meat has been cooled down. Next, we are going to add our 1 cup of chicken broth. And again, we're going to let this boil up and boil that down to about 3/4 cup of chicken broth. Keep in mind that we'll have 1 cup of wine and 3/4 cup, so 1 3/4 cup of liquid. And you want all the heat you can get. The time that the meat is on the second side should be the same as on the first side, so hopefully you're watching the clock. Now you're done searing, it's time to finish off whatever you are cooking. If you've been searing roast, you need to get the roast out of the intense heat and into direct grilling. If you've been searing pork chops or steaks, then you want to get the heat down and finish off. So with the lid up, turn the heat and flip the meat over, rotating 9 degrees so you can get a nice crisscross pattern. When you flip the leaf of the meat in the same place on a grill, unless you're having flare-ups. If you leave the lid up for about a minute, your grill will cool down to a temperature that will allow you to get the meat cooked through without charring the surface. If this cut is thin, you might be nearly done. Otherwise, grill the meat reaches desired doneness, and remember to let the meat rest for at least 5 minutes before you cut into it or serve it. This allows the juices to flow back and out onto the surface. As with any grilling method grilling, practice is the key. If you get overcooked chop or overcharged steak, think about what happened and adjust accordingly. No 2 grills are created equally, and things like wind, outside air temperature, cut, and thickness of the meat will change the circumstances of your sear. But with patience and practice, you'll be getting the perfect sear regardless of the grill of your weather. important topic has come up is when you buy the chicken, you may not be able to get a single breast from the store. You might get a package of 3 breasts. That means you have 2 breasts left over, breast chicken left over for another time. Whether you should refrigerate that chicken or freeze it. Some rules of thumb from the US FDA is that for chicken, keeping your refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or less. If you're going to use that chicken within 3 days, it is safe to keep it in the refrigerator. If you're unsure if you're going to use the chicken in 3 days, you can freeze the unused chicken and it will keep up to 1 year. Here you can see our chicken is done. Well, and just so it won't get cold, also not to overcook, I'm going to turn off the oven and just put the chicken back in the oven and just let it keep it warm that way. And this way it finishes up any additional cooking, making sure it is properly done too. The secrets of cooking with wine. Here are some basic secrets. Number 1, play off the subtle flavors of the wine. Here are some subtle food-like flavors that can come through in wine, which you want to capitalize on by adding some to the dishes containing these foods. 2, choosing dry versus sweet. A very dry wine has very few natural sugars remaining and is usually higher in alcohol. In contrast, the sweeter wines still contain a large amount of natural sugar from the grapes. So choose the type of wine depending on the flavor you want in a dish you're making. Here we added in the additional ingredients, which was some more salt, pepper, and sugar. Since the chicken broth has been boiled down to 3/4 of a cup, we added some more additional ingredients. What type of wine should you use to cook with type of food? Generally, is thought that a light flavored wine goes best with delicate flavored foods. It would follow that the bold tasting wine might do well in a bold flavored dish. Don't be afraid to do your own thing, but generally light colored meats like chicken and fish are paired with light colored wines, while dark colored meats like beef are paired with dark colored wines. What about the other white meat? You can serve either red or white with pork. Red dinner wines go well with hearty or highly seasoned foods such as beef, pork, game, duck, goose, and pasta dishes, while white wines tend to work with dishes containing chicken, turkey, fish, shellfish, ham, and veal. Consider the preparation. It is important to consider not only the type of meat, but the way the meat is prepared when choosing a wine to use in cooking or serving at the table. For example, a dish heavy in spices usually needs a full-bodied wine to stand up to it. One with a light, creamy sauce calls for a drier, light wine. The last secret to cooking wine. Feel free is to have fun. Feel free to experiment while cooking or baking with wine. Get creative and try to invent new flavor combinations. And after you've created something spectacular, don't forget to write it down and how you did it. Now we are going to need to melt in 3 tablespoons of butter. I found just you can, instead of gradually and whisking it in, just gradually just add in the 3 tablespoons, cut into cubes and pour easily to melt, and then just stir the butter into the sauce. Another important topic is when you're storing your meats and food in the refrigerator and the freezer. This comes from food safety in restaurants. You want to eliminate cross-food contamination. That is, for example, if you store a meat, a steak, in a refrigerator, shelf below it, you store, let's say, salad or bread or something else, there's a chance you're going to get cross-food contamination from that steak to the other item beneath it. So the rule of thumb is meats should be stored on a lower shelf to prevent the drippings from contaminating other foods, and separate from other items, keeping similar items stored together on each shelf, where the ones that can produce juices are stored at the lower level than the ones that don't. It's a very good rule of thumb. Otherwise, if you do end up getting cross-contamination, you can introduce a lot of germs, a lot of disease and stuff, and potential unhealthy and unsafe environment. Here we see the sauces are still a little too runny, too juicy. I need to thicken it, so I need to make a roux. Typical ingredients making roux is using cornstarch, or when you don't have cornstarch, using flour. A roux is a thickener for sauces and soups that combines equal parts flour and butter. Pre-cooking flour allows the starch granulars to swell and absorb the moisture, and lets you thicken the sauce base without the flour clumping or forming lumps. While you may not know the term, you know the techniques. A basic white sauce, such as a base for macaroni and cheese, starts with a roux. Made by cooking a flour in an oil paste until the raw flavor of the flour cooks out and the roux has achieved the desired color. A properly cooked roux imparts silky smooth body and nutty flavor while thickening soups and sauces. Roux can be made with a variety of oils and animal fats. They are commonly made with vegetable oil, olive oil, or clarified butter, but can also be made with bacon grease and other rendered fats. Since an oil-based roux will separate as the flour settles to the bottom, clarified butter is the preferred fat to use when making a roux for future use, as it will harden when refrigerated, trapping the flour in suspension. While none are better or worse than others, it does affect the flavor and how much roux can thicken. Roux begins to thicken soon after it is combined with a liquid, but it must be simmered to 10 to 20 minutes in order to reach its full flavor and thickening potential. The additional time allows the flour to soften and absorb the liquid, resulting in a silky smooth soup surface. If simmering time is too short, the flour in the roux will remain grainy. To begin making a roux, you melt 1 cup of butter in a saucepan over medium heat. Once the butter is hot enough, then a pinch of flour sprinkled into it will slowly start it to bubble, proceeding to the next step. Whisk 1 3/4 cups of flour into the butter until thick, rough paste forms. Whisk constantly while it bubbles over medium heat as it cooks. The roux will become smooth and begin to thin. The white stage is reached once the flour loosens the loses its raw smell. After about 5 minutes of cooking and stirring, another slightly grainy in texture, it is smoother than it was in the beginning. The mixture is bubbling vigorously, and the color is a little paler than when the butter and flour were first combined. After about 20 minutes continuous cooking and stirring, the roux will reach the blonde stage. The bubbles are beginning to slow, and the aroma will take on nuances of popcorn or toasted bread. The roux is now tan colored, very smooth and thinner than it was at the white stage. Brown roux will reach a peanut butter brown color about 35 minutes cooking and stirring. Even darker than brown roux, the dark brown stage will occur about 45 minutes after color, and as the color of melted milk chocolate. Carefully pour the finished roux into the baking sheet and place in the refrigerator to cool. Refrigerate the roux for several hours or overnight until it is completely hardened. Once hardened, it's easy to pry off the baking sheet in broken pieces. If you use oil or fat other than butter, the flour may settle to the bottom, and the oil will rise to the surface. Stir the oil back into the flour before using, as this will help make the roux dissolve smoothly. If you desire to pull off the oil, the roux will still work, but will require more whisking into the sauce to fully dissolve. Roux will keep indefinitely when stored in a refrigerator or freezer in an airtight container. Roux made with vegetable oil can be stored at room temperature for several weeks, but roux made with butter or fat should always be refrigerated, with perfectly prepared roux always on hand, making silky soups and sauces with a breeze. Now our sauce is ready, and we are drizzling the sauce over our chicken on our plate. And then the remaining sauce, we just put it into a bowl and use it for dipping, which is very good. And ready to enjoy.